Alright guys, welcome back to Alaska Savage. Got back from my moose hunt. As you can see, it's been a little while and it's pretty nasty. Here in Alaska, I do a lot of hunting, do a lot of fishing, and one way to preserve the hunt is to mount your own horns, take lots of pictures, helps you kind of remember the fun or the challenge or the heartache. So I'm gonna try to get this ready to either put in my shop or my house and kind of preserve it, but I've got to boil it first. This one was last year's, and I ended up leaving it at my son's house outside, so I'm going to boil that skull too, and I'll show you how I make the skull nice and white again, and then I'll show you how I bring out some of the color back in the horn. But I started out with a 55-gallon drum that I've modified and cut down. I'm going to use it to boil the skull. I'm going to put this on this crab pot cooker and put the head in there. And I'm going to fill it up with some water. I'm going to boil this for several hours, and then I'm going to pressure wash both the skulls after I get done boiling them down. There's no meat, there's no fat, there's a little staining, but the hydrogen peroxide will take care of that. I left my horns down too low and my son's dog chewed it up there, but as you can see on the palms, there's no green. This one's got a little green left on the tips, and I'll hit that with hydrogen peroxide and it'll clean it and whiten it right up. It's really crucial you get all the fat. Every bit of the fat, when you boil it, it kind of gets back on the bone. And you want to get all the fat and the meat off, and the brain cavity is completely cleaned also. I mean, you don't want any stink, any funk when you put it in your house or anywhere special. But this is all going to get hydrogen peroxide after it's good and dry, which I probably will do in the spring when I come back. But the palms are, I mean, there's a little bit of greenness on the bottom, but for the most part, I got all of that out. And after the skulls are nice and white and bleached out from the hydrogen peroxide, and the horns, this one, the older one, I'm going to put try to get a natural stain on it, a wood preservative stain, and just play around with some colors and try to get it back to its natural color. And then afterwards, I'm going to spray it with a rattle can of clear shellac, the skull and the horns. We got them cleaned up. I got them cleaned up last fall. I kind of made a mistake on not putting them in a good spot. The mice kind of chewed up on my last year's horns. This is 2 years ago, and you can tell it's got some green tips. And I'm gonna hydrogen peroxide. I don't have any beauty shop anywhere close, but just plain hydrogen peroxide works, especially with the sunlight and the warmth. It really kicks it off. But if you can get some hydrogen peroxide from a beauty supply place, it works definitely a lot faster, and it doesn't eat on the bones. Do not put bleach on them. I learned that mistake. Hydrogen peroxide is the way to go. So I'm gonna apply a couple coats, and I'm gonna try to get this greenness out. I did a set for my brother, and it actually, his whole palms were totally green and messed up. So I use the hydrogen peroxide on it. Afterwards, I'm going to put a wood stain on these and try to get them to closely match those. Those are last year's horns. and I'm going to try to get them to match that same color. And then after that, I'm going to make sure they're dry, and I'm going to spray them with a clear shellac aerosol can, and it just helps preserve the color and kind of give it that shininess, that realness look. I like it. Some people like them a little duller, but the horns are actually pretty shiny, and so I like to preserve that color and that look. So I'm just dabbling it on here. I got it on a board here so it's not going to suck up any more dirt or color from the ground. And I'm going to give this several coats. I'm going to let it dry in between. Anywhere I see green, I'm just going to dab it on there. But pressure washing, it's in deep, so pressure washing, this is about as good as it's going to get. And getting this out of here. Hydrogen peroxide doesn't damage the horns, at least any incidents that I've done with them so far, and I've done several. So, and just anywhere I see green, I want to get out that greenness. We're going to try to bring it back to somewhat of the natural color with some wood stain. I put it over these totes also to kind of reuse the hydrogen peroxide. Once I get a jug of it in here, I will just start dabbing it out of the tote. I mean, you go buy this hydrogen peroxide, it's pretty damn cheap, but I don't have really a Walmart really close. I gotta take a float plane or a ferry to go to Walmart, so about the cheapest place you can get it. Don't let if you're staining, like I did a little bit on the tips of those because they got all really dark, and I want to lighten them up a little bit, the tips, because that's not how they were. They just got rolled around in the mud and blood and everything else that made the tips, they're a little softer, so they got kind of dark. So I'm going to lighten those up. But if you have any streak of hydrogen peroxide going there, just wipe it with your hand. Don't leave that streak go, because then it just takes all the color out in a straight line, and it doesn't look natural and it's hard to fix. So if you see a little streak, this one I'm not too worried about, because I'm gonna have to stain a lot of this one to get it back to somewhat color. I got to get all this greenness off of here. And this sun, I'll be applying this several times throughout the day until I get that green out of there. And then I'm gonna get a lot more on that skull over there. I don't mind the skull being a little brown. Doesn't affect me at all. Some people want theirs pearly white. I'm not that guy. I don't mind it looking a little rough. Hell, I wouldn't even mind if it was still bloody. It looked pretty cool, all blooded up. The green's already lightening up quite a bit compared to where it was. With the sun on them, which we don't get much here in Southeast. We get a little, but it's gonna be a really nice day today. See, like that streak? I don't want that streak. I want to kind of feather it out. If you let that streak go, it eats in quite a bit. I just kind of want to feather it out. Just trying to take, the horns didn't look like this when I shot the animal, so I'm trying to just get it back to more like this. So I'm just lightening it up. I'm not going to go extreme. I just want to lighten it up a little bit. You can already see this one starting to lighten up. This is mostly blood and dirt. Packing it out. You can already see it's lightening up quite a bit. You don't need, I'm not going to go crazy with this. I definitely don't want it, I don't want it white. It's not an elk, it's a moose. And it's their horns are a little different. I wish I'd have put the horns a little somewhere safer. Mouse chewed off the tip of that one. It looks all gnarly and jagged, and they chewed off the front of the skull. put all this work and time into them, but I just got a limited amount of time. I'm pretty busy, huh?
That's an understatement.
My camera guy's dragging. He's starting to feel it. He's been running with me hard all week. He's starting to feel it.
I got some good sleep last night though, man.
Yeah, running 4 boats in a business and trying to entertain family and friends. I think I've noticed that we're not seeing hardly any deer either. It's all been fun, but it's been kind of brutal. I think it was brutal on everybody. Everybody's kind of ready for just a break. We got a bunch of fish in the freezer and had some good times, and I think it's gonna be more like socializing now and chilling back and having a beer, telling stories even if they're not true. Like I said, this one's 1 year old, that one's 2, and I just didn't have time to do them, and so I pressure washed them last fall and trying to get back into it. And also, by putting the clear shellac on there, and these loose parts that kind of get dried out after I boiled it, they kind of get a little loose, and by the clear shellac it kind of glues them all back together a little bit, gives them a little more integrity. Try not to, when you're spraying this around, try not to get it up on your color because it will take it out. So when you're working on these, try to make sure you don't get it on your good color that you're trying to preserve. It will take it off. This sun will really make this hydrogen peroxide kick and work a lot better. Alright, there's first coat. We'll let that kind of dry, and we'll keep lathering on until we get a preferred color that we're trying to get. I'm going to make sure that this is at least as bright as that one. That one I could live with that color on the skull. But I want to get the greenness out of it. And it's just from being wet and causing a little mold to grow in there. So we're going to leave these alone. Let them an hour or so, they'll dry. We'll hit them with another coat. So this is the pecan. And it's got a lot more red tint to it, as you can see. And this one is the pine, the Puritan pine. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to play around with this and see how dark this actually is. I want it close to the other set of horns. So I'm going to try to get it on here. I'm just trying to add a little color back to it. Try not to get it on your skull plate because that's where it's really going to show up and you're going to have to go back and redo it. It's not going to be perfect. I'm not looking for perfect. I'm just trying to get it back some of its natural color. Be really careful when you get towards the skull that you don't get it on it. If you do, it's not the end of the world. You just got to kind of clean it back up. It's actually pretty close. Not bad. Not bad at all. And this might take 2 coats, so just kind of let it soak in, see what you like. Where it was really bleached out and kind of punky up here, it's going to take a lot of the stain. It's really going to soak it up. These horns have been out in the sun, and where we live, the sun is kind of a rarity, so I've been trying to take full advantage of it. I don't know if you can see that. It's really soaking it up, and it's probably going to need several coats right where it's really punky. And once it gets it all soaked in, then it's going to start giving it a little glossy look, which I kind of like. I probably should have put cardboard over this table. Probably saved me a lot more cleaning. But I'm kind of in a hurry. It's the 4th of July. Just got done with a charter. But I'm just trying to get as much done today as possible. I still got to fix a roof. So, kind of trying to hurry through this. I'll grab the camera so you can kind of see a close-up once I get this a little more. But the very tips of this are really sucking this stuff up. It just doesn't look like it's really holding, but it is. You just got to keep saturating it. I did a set for my brother that were about 20 years old, and they were all green and mossy, and I was kind of pleased on how they came up. I was really worried that I wasn't going to be able to put some natural color back into them because it was soaking up so much of the stain. Before I get too crazy, just so I don't make a different mixture and do the next, I'm going to try to coat this. Before I do, I want you to kind of see the difference. So you can see how it's starting to get soak in and get the natural color back. I mean, this is, if you look here, this is one color. It's almost white, very little brown in it. And then that side starting to bring back the natural color. But you can see where the punkiness is. It's really sucking in the stain, so it's going to have to dry, and then I'll just do another coat out there. But once it gets to looking more like the natural color here, like that's a natural palm, then I'll let it dry, and I'll hit it with a bunch of clear shellac, both the skull and the horns. Okay, here they are, and they're just about, I don't think I'm going to put any more stain on them, but I brought them back pretty close to natural color. The next little phase is I'm going to put a little hydrogen peroxide on the skull where I've kind of got a little sloppy with the stain, and I'm going to get them a little white again in little spots. And then I'm going to hit it with a clear shellac aerosol can, rattle can, and they'll be ready to mount on the wall. Alright guys, this is about as good as I'm going to get them for this year. I've been pretty busy with my charter season, and I'm going to put these in the house, but I decided not to shellac the horn, or the skull. I like the horns, and if you can see, I didn't put any clear, I didn't put a clear coat on any of them. That Minwax stain had a pretty good sealer, and it's got a pretty good shine to it already, so I am not going to put a urethane spray on it, put a clear coat on it. It's as good as it's going to get. This one, if you remember at the beginning of the video, it was pretty bleached out, had a lot of green on it. I got a little careless with brushing it, got a little wind, and it splattered a little of the stain on the skull plate, but I'm not really worried about it. I just wanted to give you guys a good idea of how I do it, and if you like it, hit the like button. If you guys like what I'm pumping out, please share it with friends. Please get other people to subscribe. Just doing this to try to, people always ask me questions on how I do stuff, and the videos are the best way to show it. So please subscribe, please share it with friends, and hope you have lots of success in the field. Know where your meat comes from, whack them and stack them, and have a good time doing up your own mounts. You don't have to send it to a taxidermist, you can get it done yourself.